This meeting is now being recorded.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining our EI monthly TA call for October. And our topic today is the spirit of transition. So we will be talking today, providing some basic TA and information around the transition process. We're going to also provide information and updates on our public awareness materials, where the state is at in the Go For It process, some unicorn updates, and other information and reminders. So, in order to provide your communities with ongoing TA, the topic of transition was identified as an area where you were all saying that additional support and information was needed. So, let's start with some polls and see how you all do with answering some questions about transition. Okay, so this first one, let's see. Can you guys all see the first question? Okay. So if you can answer that and see the, so for the first question is, a child is referred as potentially eligible for preschool special education services only if they meet the criteria for Part B services. True or false? Oh, never mind. I'm sorry, you guys. The first question is, everyone's probably like, what is she talking about? I'm sorry. So the first question is, a transition plan is required to be completed for every child in EI within transition age. True or false?
We're up to 10, 11, 12. Come on, everybody. About halfway. We have 15.
How many we have, Tracy?
17 out of 33.
All right, well, let's
See the result.
See the result.
Okay, I think this is the one you just made. This is the one you
Okay, here we go. Sorry for the difficulties, you guys. We're trying this new thing, and hopefully we've got it figured out now. So, can everyone see the results now for the question? Oh yeah, you're muted. Man, I'm really struggling today. All right, well, the answer is true. All children in EI must have a transition plan as part of their IFSP. Next.
Sorry, I went too fast.
So what questions do you have posted? Okay, you post them. I'll do the other.
You want me to read?
Yep.
Okay. A child is referred as potentially eligible for preschool special education services only if they meet the criteria for Part B services. True or false? And the answers are rolling in. We have 14, 15. Everybody keep plugging in your answers. True or false? Should I go with the 15?
Yep, go for it.
And we have 4 said true and 11 said false. What's our answer? It is false. A child is potentially eligible if they meet EI definition, which was agreed upon by both EI and CDE, and we will go through the definition as part of our slide. Can everyone see the results?
No, you can't see their results. You have to post them. Yeah, and you have to allow them to see it.
Yep, they can see them now.
Yay, okay.
We haven't figured out.
We're still learning.
All right, next question.
Okay, sorry, I'm trying to figure out which ones I haven't done yet.
So if you close out of the poll, they can click on the poll icon on the top right.
Okay, next question. It is required that all children in EI have a transition conference between 2 years 3 months and 2 years 9 months of age, or as soon as possible upon entering EI if after the transition planning age. True or false? Already got some responses rolling in. We're rolling right along here. Up to 12 already. True or false? Okay, so we're up to 16, we're 17. So we have 12 true and 5 false. And the answer is false. It is only a requirement for children who are potentially eligible and were referred to Part B to have a conference. A conference can be convened for a child who is not potentially eligible, but it is not required.
And that conference would be convened with other agencies where the child might be transitioning, like a traditional preschool classroom.
And we'll talk more about all of these topics as part of our slides today. So we'll provide you with more information on this.
Next question, coming up. If you leave the AU notification for the parent to sign and you either don't receive it back on time or the parent hasn't yet decided, you don't notify the AU until you have the form completed. True or false? Our responses are coming in.
All right, Tracy, how are we doing?
Good. Good here. So, the answer is false. You wait for a period of 10 days before sending an AU notification must be sent to the AU no later than 90 days prior to the child's 3rd birthday. If the family has not signed, you have presented it, left it, mailed it, etc., it will be sent without parent signature and only the required contact information. Okay, we have one last question for you. Everybody ready? Here it comes. The AU representative must attend the transition conference, and if they do not attend, it will need to be rescheduled. True or false? Okay. Here we go. The answer is false. Good job on this one. Right out of the state plan, in the event that a representative of the AU does not attend the transition conference for a child who is potentially eligible, the SC shall conduct a transition conference as scheduled. Note, you must work with the AU to schedule the conference, and they must be invited. All right.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for participating and for working through this as we try out the polling part. I want to introduce our team here as we jump into all of this information today. I'm Monica Harrington, the training coordinator at EI Colorado, and we have helping us today Lanita Hartman and Wayla Murrow, Tracy Ferry, and Ashley Ness. So we will be providing information on transition and et cetera today. So looks like Pat had a question. He said, can we double check on something? Did you say to send the AU in whether or not you have the parent's permission, i.e. even if they opt out? So the answer is if the parent has opted out, then no, you don't send that form. But if they have not signed that they were opting out of the referral or the consent to share their information, and you just have not had the parent respond or say either way, you would just send that form. And like I said, we're going to talk about all of these things as part of our call today. So hopefully we can clarify that a little bit more for you.
Yeah, so you would just send the basic contact information and nothing else.
Okay, so let's jump into our transition planning info. So transition planning is an ongoing part of all of your conversations with the family. So upon speaking with the family initially, you are talking to them about the EI program and process. You should be discussing what's going on, or what's going to, this whole thing is going to look like for them and their child when they turn 3, and what happens when they aren't receiving early intervention services anymore. The steps that you need to transition a child are what happens between 2 years and 3 months and 2 years and 9 months. Those are those activities that we're going to jump into today. So the first thing to think about as you are entering the transition activities portion of when a child is in EI is to think about whether or not they're potentially eligible. So when a child turns 2 years and 3 months old, that's when you will need to start having those conversations with your IFSP team to determine if the child is potentially eligible for preschool special education services. The definition of potentially eligible is that it is defined as a child who is currently enrolled in EI services and who has not met all of their outcomes on his or her IFSP and is demonstrating a delay in any developmental domain based on the expertise of the entire IFSP team, or one member at least of your team.
So in thinking about the definition of potentially eligible, I know that some communities have an agreement with the AU that they want that information sent at a certain time in that time period between 2-3 and 2-9. So some communities prefer to have that sent early, so around that 2.3 time, and others prefer it later on, closer to 2-9. So that's going to impact that potentially eligible piece, so that we know that if you're sending information for children that you believe are potentially eligible at 2-3, a lot can happen by the time they're ready to transition at age 3. And so that can impact how many children actually are eligible for preschool special education. So it's something to keep in mind, and it's a conversation that's worth having with your AU.
Mm-hmm. And global outcomes, as now that that's part of the IFSP and part of the process for most of you and for all of you in the near future, that information can support the determination of children that are going to be potentially eligible.
Right. So if you are doing a global outcomes rating and in all 3 areas they have all age expected skills, we wouldn't anticipate that you would refer them as potentially eligible unless they have an established condition.
All right. So as early as 2 years and 3 months, the state AU notification form can be explained to the family. So if a family chooses to opt out, they need to understand what that really means. And what it means is that no information will be sent to the AU. It's not that they're opting out of preschool. It's that they're not consenting for you to share their information with the local administrative unit. A parent can change their mind at any time, and they would have to provide that decision in writing to the CCB. And it also may delay the start of their preschool special education services if they have changed their mind on a previous opt-out. So also note that this form, the AU notification form, becomes a part of the child's record. So it is something that every child should have an AU form as part of their record. So the transition plan itself is a page of the IFSP. So every child that has an IFSP will have a transition plan. Children whose family opts out of the referral or they are not potentially eligible, they still must have a transition plan completed. The transition plan must be completed prior to 90 days before the child's 3rd birthday. So in that transition plan, what you're going to be doing is outlining all of the steps, the activities, and the potential program options to support that family with a smooth transition for the child as they leave the EI program. So we have a question from Laura for us. Regarding the AU form, if they are not potentially eligible, do you just write NA on it and place it in the file if it's required? No, they're not. Because it's all for AU. So thanks, Laura, for pointing that out. You're right. If they're not potentially eligible, they wouldn't have a form. So it wouldn't be a part of their record. So I apologize for not making that very clear. The form is for children who are potentially eligible for preschool special education services. Thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah, so all kids that you're referring as potentially eligible should have an AU notification form on record.
Okay. So let's now talk about the content of your transition plan. There are some required components that need to be a part of every transition plan, and they include those things like the date of the plan, the date if the conference, if there was one, the date that the AU notification form was sent, the services, steps, program options, and attendees. So we're going to talk about each one of these things. So for each activity, and you're going to have to document who is going to be conducting that activity that the team has identified and the date that it needs to be completed. So remember that the parent is a part of the IFSP team. So they can have, activities or items that are determined that they would need to complete too, and you would just enter that the person who's going to be doing that is the parent, and then the agreed upon date for what that activity is thought to be completed by. So the dates are meant to be a guide. There's no penalty for missing a to be completed by date, or if there's something that you put on the transition plan and it either maybe didn't happen by a date or at all, that's okay, because these are just, recommendations or discussions that you had as part of your IFSP team when writing your transition plan. It's also there, those dates and those to be completed by people, so that the family knows, the providers know, and even you as a service coordinator can help plan out what's going to happen for this child as they exit the early intervention program. The first, or the top portion of your transition plan page itself, talks about transition services. So this is where you're going to be putting a description of what the IFSP team, and remember, like I said, that includes the parents, what you're saying is necessary to support this child and family in transition. So some examples would be, are they going to continue to be receiving early intervention services until a certain date? So if they're accessing any outside services or programs, will those continue? A good way to get some of this information is that you've already obtained throughout your conversations and your involvement with that child and family that you have in their IFSP. So any information from the family assessment or, if a recent review that you had helps to identify those current and future resources that a family may be accessing or need to access. So some other examples you could be putting in this portion of your plan, maybe a library story hour. Maybe it's a referral to a private therapy center, or you're providing resources to the family on child development. If there's going to be a break in when the child exits EI before their other potential programming may start, you could also identify in this section any interim services or resources to support the family during that time. Okay. The next portion of the transition plan is called transition steps. This is where you're going to be listing how all of those steps make sense to get through that transition phase. So is Is there a date prior to the child's third birthday, perhaps, that they will be discharged from early intervention, perhaps because of, starting preschool special education services early, or maybe it's even a vacation. The family is telling you that they're going to be gone the whole month of June for a trip to Europe, because wouldn't that be nice? Those are just part of the conversations that you would need to have. It's also going to be listing how that parent shall be informed of and included in this process. Are there steps that the parents need to take to finalize what's going to happen for that child and family when they do turn 3 and transition? Are they, would it be suggested that they visit future placement options or different types of preschool locations? Is there any necessary paperwork for that family to complete for the AU? Are there any medical records that either the school or a private center may want or need to know? So this is where you can identify that information. It's also a good place to talk about and prepare the child and the family for the changes in service delivery, because it is going to look different from what they may be used to or the services that they were getting during their time in EI compared to transitioning to a different type of program. So this is where you could provide strategies to help the family and child adjust to the new setting. That's why it might be a good idea to visit a preschool classroom with your child and have them see what it looks like and feels like, and really get an understanding of what that looks like for you. You also should encourage the family to have questions, like if they have questions, to prepare them to either ask the AU rep during your conference with them, or if you're having a meeting with another representative from a different program, that the family can ask those questions and you can document that as part of the transition plan. The last portion of the transition plan consists of program options. This is where you're going to be including information on public, private, or other community preschool options. And again, remembering that the family is a part of your IFSP team, when you're asking them what steps they would like to take to help us through this transition process, you may be able to identify different program options for them. If the family only wants to be referred to the local AU and they don't have interest in exploring other possibilities, then you don't have to provide a lot of information on other program options or information. But if they do, this is where that you would put that information. If the family is going to be accessing any interim services between the time that they leave EI and potentially start another program, this is where you could also list what that specifically looks like. And it's important to include the specifics on location, the times of classes, even the contact information or people for the different programs that you're supporting the family with exploring. This also, under the program options portion of the plan, may be a place where you could list the day and time of the Part B evaluation. If it's part of your transition conference, that is determined at that time, this is a good place to put that. Also, though, is any discharge information from the EI program. Is that family going to continue to stay connected to your CCB? And if so, in what way and what options or what things need to happen for that family to continue with whatever program they're entering after EI for your CCB. Another key point about the transition plan is that it needs to be a unique plan to that family and individualized based on that child. It should not be a fill-in-the-blank form. There are instances where you may have a lot of the same type of information for many of the children that are in your CCB area or particular school district. And that's okay, because if they're going through the same process or entering the same program after transition, that would make sense. But it shouldn't be the same plan for all children with just different dates or different names of people on the transition plan. The focus should really be on the fact that the family is leaving the EI program and that you want to provide them with all the information that they may need or their new program may need. You are not just transitioning them into Part B services. They are transitioning out of the early intervention program. So it's really important to have a unique and individualized plan that has as many specifics as possible to help support everyone in the transition process. All the information that we talked about for all of these things and parts of the plan too, excuse me, all the information that you've learned about the family and that your IFSP team decides is necessary steps or appropriate action should all lead up to the development of an individualized transition plan. So now let's talk about that transition conference. So this is related to one of the polling questions about that all children must have a transition conference between 2 years, 3 months, 2 years, and 9 months. And when the answer was false. And the reason is that the transition conference is held for children who are potentially eligible and are referred to Part B. The conference is with the administrative unit, and it's not allowed for children whose family opts out. So children that are not potentially eligible, a conference may be held with other agencies, other programs, other people, but it's not a requirement. So the transition plan is different from the transition conference. So you would still have a transition plan for those children that opt out or who are not potentially eligible, but you would not necessarily have a conference. Laura has another question. Is there a way to get around entering the data in the unicorn if the child is not potentially eligible?
So you still need to indicate that under the LEA notification, late reason is not potentially eligible.
Okay. So let's talk about the AU notification form itself. And hopefully this can clarify some of the other polling questions and chat questions that we had. So the CCD shall notify, using the state form, the AU of a child who is potentially eligible, unless the parent has signed the opt-out policy statement. And that is required not fewer than 90 days and not more than 9 months prior to the child's 3rd birthday. And again, remembering that the parent may revoke that opt-out at any time. So this form becomes part of the child's record for potentially eligible children. They wouldn't have the form if they're not potentially eligible. And that data about when the AU notification form was signed needs to be entered into the unicorn for all children on their transition page, right? Yeah. Transition stage. So the AU representative needs to be invited to your transition conference. So if you have scheduled the transition conference and provided the AU with the information on the meeting and how to contact the child or family, and they're unable to attend, you still hold the conference. The AU representative can attend via phone or providing specific program information for you to present to the family, but they are required to follow up with the family if they have not been able to attend the conference. It's not an allowable late reason that you missed your transition conference date because the AU representative was either canceled or was not able to make it. So all components of indicator 8 should be at 100% because we have total control over this activity. As you're scheduling the transition conferences, again, like Lenita mentioned earlier, you should have some steps or agreed upon practices with your local AU to attend the transition conference. But in event that they are not there, you still hold that conference.
I'll say a couple things. So a piece of scheduling it is critical that you work with the AU to schedule that. So we wouldn't expect that you just put together a calendar of conferences and hand it over to the AU, that you're working together to schedule those for times that work for your AU representative as well.
Okay. So all information that's contained within the IFSP must be entered into the EI data system. And it's not just the dates or those required components of the plan of when you notified the AU, etc. It's all of the information within the transition plan itself. So we should be able to read all of those steps, all of the program options, and all of the activities that your IFSP team came up with as part of that child's IFSP on that transition plan page. Just another note, the date that's entered in the unicorn for the transition plan date is the date that transition plan is started, and it's after or between that 2 years, 3 months, and 2 years, 9 months. So the transition plan itself can be added to, and it's a page that may not be complete in just one conversation, but the plan date is the date that you start that after 2-3. So this is a visual representation of all of the pieces that make up transition. Sometimes it's easier to view things as a visual instead of just reading it. So when you're thinking of transition, that transition time, there's different components that make up that word transition, and they include the potentially eligible piece. Starting during that transition activity time, you're going to start thinking or identifying if that child's potentially eligible. Then it's the plan. Every child has a transition plan as part of their IFSP. So, that the plan itself is different than the conference, which we talked about. And then for the AU notification, again, we have on here, every child has an AU notification as part of their file. And what we're meaning is those that are potentially eligible. So if they're not, then they would not have an AU notification. And we'll fix that on the slide so that if when you're viewing it or looking at it later, it clearly states that. And that last piece of transition is having a conference. So that conference is required for children who are potentially eligible and have been referred. It is not a requirement for children who are not potentially eligible or and it's not allowed for children whose parents have opted out. But it can happen if you're having other program options or a separate meeting for that discussion of program options for that child and family.
So the other piece that we recognize with the conference is that, families are not very happy if you have that transition conference and they're expecting information from the school district about what's going to happen, and we recognize that can be not as effective as a conference as it could be if the AU is there, and we recognize that that's a reason that sometimes families don't want to move forward with that. So thinking about what those can look like in the event that does happen, so that there's still a productive use of the family's time, and what resources do you have available to share with them. So as Monty said, if you have programs that children are going to be going to and there are options, you can give general information about what's available in your community. It's not going to be, your child will be in classroom A or B, but it's a more of a general overview of what the preschool classroom looks like in your community so that it isn't a waste of the family's time.
Okay. Pat has a question. So if the child is potentially ineligible, but the family would like to notify the AU anyway, we are not being asked to deny that, correct? I can self-refer. And no, you're not. The family can self-refer and contact the school to request an evaluation. And that's why we, in our conversation today, we talked about the definition of potentially eligible. So if the child is not meeting that definition of what potentially eligible is, you would have that conversation and say that, as far as, what the EI definition is, your child would not be potentially eligible for preschool special education services. Okay, so we're going to unmute. Is everyone unmuted?
All guests have been unmuted.
So if you have other questions, please feel free to.
The governing board, and the reality is they're not meshing great.
So we're hearing some some conversation.
All guests have been muted.
So that's difficult to try and hear your questions. So if you do have questions, just go ahead and enter them in the chat, and we will do everything we can to answer them as we're talking today. So please feel free to enter your questions. So hi everybody, this is Wayla. Just wanted to give you an update on our public awareness materials. We are planning to update and sort of renew our public awareness materials, and so because of that, we are not going to be reprinting any of the family guidebooks. So the newborn and then Guidebook 1, Guidebook 2, and Guidebook 3. They are still available on the EI Colorado website for download if you wanted to do that, or you can refer families to look at that. But those are not going to be available for order. When you go to the order form, you will see that they're still listed there. That's because we weren't able to get them off of the form, but it does have a little note that says not available to order. And Tracy, go ahead. So like I said, they're available there. You could download and print them if you wish, or you can just refer families directly to those guidebooks if that's something that you want, a resource you'd like to have for them. What the materials that are going to be available are the family rights. That's a required document, so we will have those available. We'll update the logo and that sort of thing on there. We are currently updating the family overview, and those will be available in both English and Spanish. That's sort of a general overview for early intervention services. The train brochure with the developmental steps and how your child learns and grows will be available also. And then the referral forms, they come in a pad of 25 with English on one side, Spanish on the other. Those are still going to be available. So those are available for order. If you order some of the guidebooks, or if you have ordered them in the past couple of months, we are out of those, so we're not going to have any more available of those guidebooks.
Okay, so this is Juanita, and I just want to follow up on something we have in the chat for those who are only on the phone. So just an insight that it seems like with thinking about, oh geez, I just cleared it. Thinking about a notification for families that are not going to be identified as potentially eligible, how can we support them in the process? So really what we're saying here is you would not refer the family to the AU using the AU notification form, because that's our formal way of identifying who is potentially eligible to the school district. You may certainly share all the information with the family about the school district, who they should contact, and support them in getting that done. But you would not use the AU notification form. So hopefully that clarifies that question. We do want to keep it supportive and family friendly, but we also want families to understand it's a referral to special education, and that we do believe that it's important to refer children that we believe are going to be found eligible.
Right, because they're not opting out of preschool. They're opting out of the early intervention program, sharing their identifiable information as a referral for special education services. So they can still contact the AU themselves if they want to.
All right, and then Lori, you have a question. If you have a transition plan and the child is ineligible for Part B and no conference is held, then what is the reason for late conference and unicorn? So you don't have to then fill out a late reason in the transition conference. When you close out the client case, you can choose the closed eligible exit reason is not eligible for Part B, no referral was made, or not eligible for Part B, a referral was made maybe to an outside agency.
Okay, any more questions related to transition or public awareness? Okay, so we're going to quickly go through some Go For It updates, and we are just so happy that all the communities in Cohort 1 are fully implemented and trucking along, and the QIO ratings are being conducted, and those of you that are in Cohort 1, I'll be looking for the Program Initiatives Unit to reach out to you probably in this next 6-month period to support you in continued implementation strategies and opportunities for technical assistance. Cohort 2, most of the communities are fully implemented or have those timelines in place to be implemented, and some CCBs are beginning to use the QIO as well in Cohort 2. In Cohort 3, all but one community has received the universal training, so that's 19 out of our 20 CCBs, so we're really excited about that. And implementation plans are in place and pilots are happening. And one community in Cohort 3 is already using the QIO, so that's exciting as well. So we are offering an additional universal training for those that either need a refresher or haven't had an opportunity within the Denver metro area. Unless you feel like going on a road trip, you're welcome to come from all corners of the state. We are offering a training at Developmental Pathways on October 31st.
Not Halloween themed though.
No, sadly. But maybe we'll have goodies. We'll see. You never know. We are expecting, in order to offer the training, we have to have a minimum of 20 participants, and we're going to close it at 100. So if you're interested in that training or you have providers or service coordinators, they can sign up on the EI website. And if you're confused about how to do that, please contact Tracy Sperry so she can walk you through that. Okay, so in terms of family assessment, we're really excited that we have rolled out a new training on family assessment. It's really about high quality practices and how to facilitate a conversational interview. And we are going to have video examples available very soon that are specific to the SAFER as well as the facets. And then in terms of more training that will be available, we do know that we're going to be offering one probably later this fall or early winter in the metro area on family assessment. So we'll let you know when that's happening. So Whitney, you're asking about a generalized EI training. So the universal training is specific to Go For It. And we will be reaching out to your community specifically about when that is going to happen for you. Okay. So just a couple clarifications. One of them is related to communities that are implementing already. We were training that as part of the IFSP outcome that you need to select which global outcome it aligns with. And you'll see that in the unicorn as well. And in the past, we've allowed you to choose more than one global outcome. We are changing that, and we are asking that you only choose the global outcome that most closely aligns with the intent of the IFSP outcome. So it could be that it would fit in 2 areas, but we want you to just choose one. So That's a clarification for those of you that have been in training. Please share that with your teams. Here is another clarification that actually applies to everybody. It was unearthed as part of Go For It implementation, and it's related to established conditions. And when you're thinking about conducting assessments for children that are already eligible due to established conditions, you only need one provider to conduct that assessment. All areas of development must be assessed, just like for children suspected of delay. You can consider other resources that you have for information. So if there has been medical documentation that was conducted in the NICU or other tests, they can inform the assessment as well. And you certainly may opt to have more than one provider conduct the assessment, but it is only required that you have one provider. So that's a clarification we wanted to make. Any questions related to that? Okay. So the last thing that we want to talk about related to Go For It is the Spanish Go For It documents. So they have been translated. We've received feedback related to them and made suggested edits. And we will, be working on things on an ongoing basis to make sure that they're available in Spanish. So please continue to give us feedback and ask questions related to that. And all the Spanish documents, are they on the website?
No, we have a meeting that is scheduled with everyone who provided edits. So we're going to do like another separate TA call with them and finalize the edits, since they came in from different places and they all look different. We're going to settle on one version and then they will be available.
And do we have a date for that?
Yep.
That they'll be available?
Oh, no, not that they'll be available.
Okay. So coming soon, and we'll let you know.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, this is Ashley, and I have a couple unicorn updates for everyone. I know we're getting close on our time. So the Medicaid has been removed from the insurance type, and it's now its own separate field in the insurance section on the client case. So you can see a screenshot of it below. We're working on adding the Medicaid field to the IFSP, so it's not there just yet, but we're working on getting it there. Some more updates. Once an initial IFSP has been created and the child has been determined eligible for EI services, the status on the client case will automate to being active. So if it's already active and you create that IFSP, it'll just stay active. If the child is missing the race, ethnicity, and or Hispanic Latino fields on the client contact, users will not be able to create that IFSP. Those are required fields, so make sure that users are entering that. There is a report, and it's called Missing Race, Ethnicity, or Hispanic Latino, and it's located in the Early Intervention CCB folder. So it identifies all children that are missing that information. Tracy, can we have more characters on the eval page to enter medications? So that is also coming very, very soon. We had to put that out for the developers to do because it also refers to updating the offline IFSP. So we can't just update one without updating the other. So that will be coming soon. The consent date is going to be required on all new and continued revised services. Actual start dates cannot be prior to the consent. Intensity and frequency is required on all services. And coming very, very soon, any newly created IFSP outcomes, the status will default to new. So more date TBD. I'm still working on getting that figured out. Very exciting news. Our Spanish IFSP is set to go live next Friday. Woohoo! The wait is over. We have a user group and it's been testing this past week. Testers have reported minor issues, so that's really awesome. And a huge thank you to all the testers. Go again. Oh, it didn't do it. Maybe can you go back? We're trying this one more time. Nope, nothing. All right, well, there they are. Oh! Anyways, we have our list of testers out there, so thank you everybody that was testing. So that, just quick high level about the Spanish IFSP. It will be available in both English and Spanish. Users will be able to enter an entire IFSP in Spanish and have it translated to English and vice versa. Instructions will be sent out next Thursday as it will go live on Friday. Yay. For NICU referrals, if a referral has come in through the NICU project, you can indicate Marnie Bryson as the referral source in the data system.
Okay, so here we have the dates for the statewide meeting for next year, so make sure you get this on your calendar. We would like 2 people from each CCB to attend. We will be fully funding that. We are currently working on a location, are fairly close to having that determined, and hope to have that by next month's call.
So the dates are May 16th and May 17th of 2018. Very excited for that. So as just a final reminder for telehealth, it's important for EI service coordinators and supervisors to go ahead and take the telehealth training. It's available on the EI website. It will provide an overview of telehealth, and it will help you think about ways that telehealth can be better promoted and utilized across the state. There are instructions and information on how to get connected onto the learning management system on our website under training, under community center boards. So take a look at that, and you'll need to sign up for the learning management system, but when you do that, you will already be signed up. So this will be a great opportunity for you to already be signed up for whenever our EI fundamentals comes out later this year, because we know that everybody's going to want to take that also. Sometimes I do make people inactive so that we can keep our licenses current and that sort of thing. Later on, if you're inactive, I'll give you instructions for how to do that. Basically, it's just contacting me. I'll make you active again. Early intervention providers only can provide telehealth if they have taken the training, the family needs to sign the consent form, and it's listed as a method on the IFSP. This all needs to happen at an IFSP meeting through conversation with the family to help them understand that. So you're not just able to start telehealth at any point. You have to make sure that you talk about it, have an IFSP meeting to make sure that that information is added. If all of the requirements are met and telehealth is being added as a method, then the provider can bill an additional $10 per telehealth visit. And that's because of different costs associated with that, and also sort of a little bit of an incentive to help providers with that. And then families, they can have a mix of telehealth and in-person visits, either with the same provider or with different providers, depending on the situation and the individualization of the plan. Any questions about that? So thank you, everybody. I know we went a little bit over today, but thank you for sticking with us and participating in our poll questions, and for all of your questions today too. We want to thank everybody, and if there are no other questions in the chat, we will sign off. So thanks again, everybody. If you do have questions, feel free to reach out to your EI State team.
Thank you.
Thank you.